They say every light fades with time. Every flame burns out, every story ends, and every man grows too old to matter. But sometimes, a single spark refuses to die. On the edge of a forgotten coastline, where the sea never sleeps and the wind still carries the scent of salt and memory, there stands a tower, tall, silent and tired. They said its light had gone out years ago. They said the world didn't need it anymore. But one man did. And when the night grew darker than it had ever been, he proved that some lights and some hearts were built to shine forever. This is the story of the Last Lighthouse Keeper, and the night the sea remembered his name. They said the old lighthouse at Windmere Point would be torn down before the winter came. It had been standing there for more than a century, battered by salt and storms, its stone walls holding stories that no one cared to remember anymore. The ships no longer needed it, they said. There were satellites now and GPS and drones guiding every vessel safely to shore. The world had moved on. The light was useless. But for Walter Reed, 82 years old, with silver hair and hands marked by time, that lighthouse wasn't just an empty shell of the past. It was his home, it was his life, and it was the only thing left that still called his name. For 40 years, Walter had climbed its narrow spiral staircase every morning, his boots echoing against the cold metal steps, the sound of the ocean following him like a heartbeat. He cleaned the lenses, wiped the glass, and polished the brass until it gleamed like sunlight. At dusk, he would light the great lamp by hand, watching as the golden beam stretched across the horizon, cutting through the fog, a promise to every sailor who saw it. You're not alone. You're almost home. Then, one day, a letter arrived. It was official and cold, like most letters that bring bad news. The government was automating the lighthouse network. No more keepers. No more need for men like Walter. They sent him a certificate of appreciation and a small pension, just enough to live on, if he didn't mind living without purpose. Walter read the letter twice, folded it carefully, and placed it in his desk drawer. The next day, he walked to the lighthouse like he always had. And the day after that, and the day after that, no one came to stop him. No one even noticed. Every morning he would open the heavy door, breathe in the scent of sea salt and old wood, and whisper, "Morning, old friend." He talked to the lighthouse like it was alive. Sometimes he swore it answered him back, in the creaks of the walls, the hum of the sea, the soft moan of the wind through the vents. The townsfolk said he'd gone mad, an old man clinging to ghosts. But Walter knew better. The lighthouse was listening. The years passed quietly. Tourists stopped coming. The town built new docks and modern marinas. People forgot there had ever been a time when men lived alone on cliffs just to keep a flame burning. But Walter stayed. He tended the wildflowers that grew near the rocks. He fed the gulls that circled above the tower. He wrote letters to the maritime office that no one answered. And every evening, just as the sun began to sink into the ocean, he would climb the stairs one more time, stand at the top, and imagine the light turning on again. Even though the lamp was gone, he swore he could still feel its warmth. "You're still shining," he would whisper. "I can feel it." One afternoon in late summer, a young boy wandered up the path. He couldn't have been more than 10. He carried a sketchbook under his arm and a curiosity too big for his age. "Mister," he said, "is it true this place used to talk to ships?" Walter smiled, the kind of smile that starts deep in the heart. "Aye, it did," he said. "Used to tell them where home was." The boy sat beside him, drawing the lighthouse with careful lines. "And what does it say now?" he asked. Walter looked out at the sea. "Now, it listens." They became friends after that. The boy, whose name was Noah, came every week after school. Walter told him stories about storms and shipwrecks, about bravery and love, about how sometimes the hardest part of keeping the light isn't to fighting the dark outside. It is fighting the dark inside. Noah listened with wide eyes, drawing as Walter spoke. filling page after page with sketches of waves, gulls, and the old man's hands. For the first time in years, laughter returned to the lighthouse. Then came the night of the storm. It started quietly, a low wind creeping across the cliffs, carrying whispers of trouble. By dusk, the horizon had turned black, and thunder cracked like cannon fire. The townsfolk ran to secure their homes, but Walter climbed the hill. The rain hit hard, the paths slick with mud, the sea roaring louder than any memory. At the top, he saw the waves smashing against the rocks below. Out in the distance, a faint light blinked desperately, a fishing boat caught in the storm. The new automated harbor lights had gone out. The radio towers were silent, and the only place left that could be seen for miles was the old lighthouse. Walter stood in the doorway, heart pounding. He looked at the broken lamp, the cold room, the empty lens. Then he did what he'd done all his life. He climbed. Each step burned. Each breath felt heavier than the last. "Come on, old man," he muttered. "One more time." When he reached the top, he found the old oil lantern he'd kept for memory's sake. His hands shook as he struck the match. For a moment, the flames sputtered, then caught. The light spread slowly across the glass, golden and alive. The beam pushed through the rain, slicing the darkness in two. Down below, the sailors saw it. One of them shouted, "There, the light!" They steered toward it, guided like generations before them. The storm raged on, but they made it safely to shore. When they finally reached land, soaked and trembling, one of them asked, "Who's running that old tower again?" The mayor looked puzzled. "Nobody," he said. "It's been empty for years." When they climbed up the hill, they found Walter sitting beside the lamp, drenched but smiling, his eyes reflecting the light he'd brought back to life. "You saved them," someone said. Walter chuckled, voice soft as rain. "No," he said. "The lighthouse did." The story spread through town like fire. The man who brought the light back, the keeper who couldn't let go. Reporters came, cameras came, officials came, but Walter didn't care for attention. He just wanted the lighthouse repaired. "It's still needed," he told them. "You can't replace a heart with a machine." By autumn, the mayor announced the lighthouse would be restored, not demolished. Donations came in from everywhere. Children sent drawings, sailors wrote letters. The town painted the tower white again. And when the ribbon was cut, Walter stood quietly in the back, his hands clasped, tears shining in his eyes. They unveiled a plaque that read, "For Walter Reed, who reminded us that some lights never go out." After that day, he never stopped visiting. He came every morning with Noah, who was now his apprentice, teaching him how to polish the glass, how to listen to the rhythm of the wind, how to feel when a storm was coming. He told him that every beam of light was more than just illumination. It was hope stretched across the sea. "It's not about seeing," Walter said one day. "It's about being seen." The lighthouse became a place of peace again. Visitors from all over came to see it, but what they remembered most wasn't the view. It was the warmth. The way Walter greeted everyone like an old friend. The way he laughed when children asked if the light had magic. "Of course it does," he'd say. "Everything that helps someone find their way home is magic." Years passed, and the town changed, but the lighthouse didn't. It stayed strong, tall against the wind, its light steady as Walter's heart. On his 86th birthday, Noah brought him a cake with one candle. They sat by the sea, eating quietly, the sun dipping low. "You ever get tired of the same view?" Noah asked. Walter smiled. "The sea's never the same twice. You just have to keep watching." That night, Walter stayed late at the top of the tower, watching the beams sweep across the waves. He thought of the ships he'd saved, the storms he'd braved, the people who'd forgotten and then remembered. He closed his eyes and listened. The creak of the wood, the hum of the wind, the ocean breathing below. "You did well, old friend," he whispered. "You kept shining." The next morning they found him sitting peacefully by the lantern, his hands folded, a small smile on his lips. The light was still glowing beside him. The townsfolk said the sea had finally called him home. But Noah, now a grown man, believed something else. He believed Walter had simply followed the light. The lighthouse still shines every night, its beam cutting across the waves just as it always did. And every time it turns, people swear they can hear a faint voice in the wind, calm, kind, and full of laughter. Keep your light burning, it says. The world still needs it. And somewhere far beyond the horizon, maybe in some place where old sailors rest and the sea is always calm, Walter Reed still climbs the stairs, still lights the lamp and still watches the ocean with a heart full of peace, because some men leave behind monuments, but the greatest ones leave light. The sea is calm again now, the storms have passed, and the light still turns, slow, steady, unbroken. They say Walter Reed is gone, but anyone who stands by the cliffs of Windmere Point knows better. Because sometimes, when the fog rolls in and the waves whisper against the rocks, you can still hear a voice in the wind, gentle, certain, and kind. Keep your light burning, it says. The world still needs it. And maybe that's the truth of it all. We don't stay because we have to. We stay because something in us refuses to stop shining. Some men leave behind monuments, but the greatest ones leave light.